Welcome back to HFO Multifamily MarketWatch, your trusted source for information for apartment owners and investors. Multifamily MarketWatch is presented by Pacific Exteriors Northwest, a contractor specializing in siding and exterior envelopes and delivering exceptional quality and service for over 30 years. And by Gantry Incorporated, the nation's largest independent mortgage banking firm.
Welcome back to Multifamily Market Watch. I'm Greg Frick, partner at HFO Investment Real Estate. Today we have back with us Ezra Hammer, shareholder of Jordan Ramus Law Firm. Thank you for coming back to see us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime. So I thought we'd talk a little bit. It's been in the paper a lot. People have talked about it the last few years. The office to apartment conversion opportunities, specifically in downtown Portland.
Yeah, something that's been a hot topic now for at least 3 years.
Right.
Something that we're starting to see have real legs in other cities. It's been something that's been highly successful in California for at least 3 decades. Los Angeles put in place a program back in 1999 and had initially targeted it in the downtown core. For those of you that remember 1990s Los Angeles, this is, Terminator Los Angeles. This is some real dark, scary stuff. And if you go there today, despite some of the rougher edges that they're grappling with right now, it's a vibrant place. There's upwards of 50,000 people living in the downtown core.
Within the downtown core.
Right. And if you look at Southern California, downtown Los Angeles was actually the fastest growing zip code in the entire region for a number of decades. And that was because of their initial foray into what they call adaptive reuse, which is converting old commercial buildings to residential uses. Some of the first stuff was actually targeted towards the creative community. It was meant for artists. It was meant for people in the film and TV space who kind of love these old historic buildings, didn't need a lot of square footage and wanted to be in areas that were highly amenitized and had fun nightclubs and bars and restaurants to go to.
Was it going like a live work kind of combo space, or was it strictly residential?
Strictly residential.
Okay.
And the first stuff was actually condominiums. It was some of the most affordable housing that you could buy in Los Angeles. And you could kind of come in, get your square footage, and see the community grow around you. After the first dozen or so buildings were converted, you had real momentum shift. And so you had market rate developers coming into the space and building ground up on empty parking lots, converting low slung office buildings into the towers that we know and love today in the Los Angeles skyline.
And what now, like you said, there's something to get some momentum. There has been. What, I know the city set aside some money here to kind of look at that. What's your take on the process where we are, maybe even compared to where LA was 30 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we are miles away from the starting line on this stuff, but the opportunity's there. The challenge is that Portland faces really are broken down into 3 buckets. On the first hand, you have the building code requirements. And we've actually been highly aggressive from an earthquake retrofit standpoint. We've put in place a series of regulations that add millions of dollars to the cost of conversion of pretty much any of these older buildings.
Any use. I mean, just the change of use on any building with the code. Yes.
That's right. And particularly with residential, you're facing the risk of an untested market. And so it's more challenging for people to underwrite it because they don't know what the rents are going to be. They don't know how the tenants are going to respond to the space. And they don't know what sort of amenities may or may not pop up around in the community. So you're adding a tremendous upfront cost. What I'd love to see Los Angeles do Portland to do, instead of putting $15 million aside, is really think about a dedicated fund that could be used for funding the earthquake retrofit of these buildings, maybe a low cost or interest-only loan for a period of years, let these buildings stabilize, take that money back, and support new buildings coming into place.
So limiting some of the upfront costs that a conversion or developer would have to go through with the unknown on this building code.
That's right. Either that or structurally change the way that we approach earthquake retrofit. That's a very politically sensitive subject, right? People are going to say, well, you're going to make these buildings less safe. The counter argument is, if you remember 2 city councils ago, Joanne Hardesty actually ran through an exemption for earthquake retrofits for certain types of buildings because the owners of those buildings, and there was concern around equity and people losing their buildings if they were forced to retrofit. So there is precedent for re-examining the earthquake retrofit standards that we have in place, but they're very politically sensitive. The second batch of challenges really has to do with the zoning code. As with most things in Portland, we've kind of overregulated. We've crafted something that
That's a nice
is,
way to say it.
It is,
Yes.
If you were to pick up a zoning code in Vancouver, Washington, or Tigard, Oregon, and compare it with the city of Portland, I mean, we're talking pamphlets to tomes. There's just no comparison. And we've put in place a highly regulated structure that was really finalized at a time when the market was hot and there were a lot of concerns about growth, right? We wanted to moderate it. We wanted to put the brakes on. And so we
slow down the growth. Exactly.
Absolutely. And those times have come and gone, but the regulations remain the same. And so people who are looking at these buildings have to scratch their head and say, do I want to go through a complicated, costly land use process where I'm going to need a ton of exemptions because these buildings are old as heck and they're going to need to be changed? On top of that, have the risk associated with kind of being first to market in this regard. Now, Los Angeles is actually a great example of how to tackle this. They relaxed their standards when it came to historic buildings so that things like fire life safety could be addressed in an appropriate way without taking projects through the same sort of rigor that they would in a traditional kind of historic review context, right? You're going to need to swap out windows. And if that's going to turn into a 12-month process, then your lender's going to have a real hard time with that. But if you can have certainty that you can upgrade the building in a way that addresses fire life and safety without having to go through that regulatory process, it's going to look a lot more attractive. The other thing Los Angeles did was recognize the fact that these buildings are really under amenitized, right? These are old commercial buildings. And so they basically allowed for unlimited amenities to be added onto the building. We see this in the form of open space on roofs. Now, traditionally, that is either not allowed or triggers a whole host of regulations associated with it. But Los Angeles said, no, we want people to make these buildings attractive, and so we're going to go that route.
Recognize that you have to make the project viable.
Absolutely.
But if we have zoning codes and building codes and other things like that are going to prevent that, it's just another roadblock that's not going to get this thing moving at all.
100%. The building codes you talk about, that's really the 2B, right? Which is kind of what do these apartments need to look like? Right? Our building codes require apartments to be a certain size. Historically, things like micro units have been a dirty word, right? We've determined that habitable space needs to be a certain amount of square footage. That's not the case with Tokyo. That's not the case with Seoul. That's not the case with Los Angeles. Units can vary depending on the needs of the occupants, and we would need to structurally re-examine the minimum requirements for habitable space so that a building owner or developer could parcel off these floors into smaller habitable spaces with shared amenities. Because at the end of the day, what works in the east side and what works in the hills in the west isn't necessarily what a downtown resident wants. The third piece is really a big unknown, and that has to do with rent control. There's a very live question that hasn't been dealt with yet that asks whether these buildings would have the same, whether an adaptive reuse building would have the same kind of period of grace that new construction would from the rent control regulations. And that's something that needs to be decided. Without that certainty in place, lenders are going to have a much harder time underwriting these projects. It's doubly important for these types of projects because, again, the product is untested in market. And so your pro forma is going to have a lot of question marks in it. And if you set the rents too low and then you're forced to lock into that scheme, you could absolutely kill a project. That was a huge fight in Los Angeles, and that was resolved to allow these units to be treated as new construction.
So they were treated like a new construction deal with the exemption.
Regardless of how old the building is. And so that allows the unit to enter the marketplace, find the correct rent, and then stabilize at a time when we understand the implications for the marketplace. So those are the three big challenges that the city's dealing with. And it's awesome to see that there's continued energy on this. I've been heartened to hear a number of city councilors talk about their desire to see this. Obviously, there's a lot of enthusiasm in the community generally, but we're a long way from getting to a place where you have a code that is simple, usable, a code that addresses the fact that these earthquake retrofit standards are extremely costly, and importantly, one that recognizes that these units need to be treated as new for the purpose of the rent control regulations.
I said, I'm with you. You hear a lot about it, but nobody wants to get into the details of what does it really take to get that direction going. As you said, This is unproven, so it's going to be capital that's taking a risk. We've got to ease some of the roadblocks to get them in here.
Yeah.
Are you confident that we're heading in that direction, or do we need some more success stories like LA and other markets to show, look, this is what would happen if it's, not saying roll the red carpet, at least pave the way a little bit?
Well, why not roll the red carpet
Well, I would
out?
say that too, but yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, the point that I would raise to any elected official is these buildings are sitting empty today, right? They're useless from a tax standpoint.
Well, that's property taxes.
Right. They're useless from a use standpoint. They're degrading the lived experience in downtown, right? They hurt small businesses because they're empty and because they become an attractive nuisance. And importantly, from a green building standpoint, there's nothing more carbon friendly than an existing building, right? You are not going to have a lower carbon footprint on a per square foot basis with any type of construction when it's compared to an existing building. And so we can recognize that as a community good, and we can heavily incentivize it. I'd love to see a program where it's full white glove service. To your point, roll the red carpet out. Let's encourage people to take risks with some of these buildings. I've toured with clients a number of historic buildings in downtown, beautiful buildings that are sitting vacant. And if we could get even one or two of these to go through the process and prove concept in market, I think a lot of people would be excited about it. And I think we can incentivize it in the same way that the city council is thinking really progressively about how to incentivize multifamily construction generally with the SDC waiver. I think we need targeted attention and focus on this to produce a set of incentives that are highly usable.
Yeah, we need a couple to go. And even if they're not, just to start the process to show that they can work through these or highlight the issues that they need to work through ahead of time and get the city to make some tweaks and some changes.
That's right.
Which kind of brings back, what is your thought on the waiving of the system development charge? We're all for it. I think it's great. I think it needs to be more. But do you think that's going to be enough to incentivize construction of your standard multifamily projects?
It's a great question. And I think we're really answering two separate questions, right? The first is the project that's ready to go, but for, right? Lending costs are high. They're sitting on entitlements or they're ready to pull and they're thinking about how we get there. There's a universe of projects that are right on that bubble. And this SDC waiver is absolutely meaningful. And I'm hopeful that we'll see some good momentum there. And again, all it takes is a little bit, because right now we're at the bottom, right? We're permitting less units per year than any time since the Great Recession. Mm-hmm. And that is a model for failure for the city and for the state. So I think for the marginal projects and for the projects that were but for, they're ready to go. The question that I'm more interested in is how do we communicate this effectively to capital in other parts of the country and other parts of the world? How do we craft that or add that to a narrative that we craft that says Portland wants you here, right?
We are rolling out the red carpet.
We are rolling out the red carpet, right? Because for a long time, Portland was putting up those roadblocks. I remember a time when a sitting city commissioner would say something like, are we sure we want all these people moving here? Are we sure we want all these units being built? There is a deep-seated through line in our culture that harkens back to Tom McCall, right? The come visit, but don't stay. And that kind of ugly narrative raises its head in various forms, right? Sometimes on the right, sometimes on the left. But most recently, it kind of came to fruition with this set of regulations that we developed around housing generally. And again, if you compare what we have to what other cities have, it's way more complex and doesn't produce better results. So if we can take this and we can package that with, say, the recent city council decision, or the city council decision last year to kind of waive height requirements in the downtown core, the recent decision by the city of Portland to not appeal the HFO determination that forces them to allow for variances in certain circumstances, kind of package those pieces together. Now we have a narrative going, right? And is that something that's going to be compelling enough to somebody sitting in Denver or Miami or Toronto or Vancouver to say, yeah, I'm ready to go deploy some capital here?
Well, look now, at least start the conversation. Because right now, as you said, the narrative is so we're not doing anything for you. They're going to go somewhere else. It's least resistance. And so something to show. And I'm with you. It's a great start. There needs to be more targeted and more in depth on that to try to really get this thing going.
100%. And to put a finer point on it, we're trying to get back on the PowerPoint deck. And what I mean by that is in speaking with clients who are looking at 20 or 30 markets in North America, they're being told by their finance committees, don't show me Portland. I'm not interested, right? Show me Milwaukee, right? Show me Sacramento. Show me Alberta.
Milwaukee.
Not our own Milwaukee here. No,
Milwaukee.
Yes. Midwest Milwaukee, right? That's what people are asking for.
Yes.
And all we need to do is get back on the PowerPoint because we have such incredible bones here, right? We have such incredible fundamentals that once we can get people seeing that the narrative from 2022 and 2023 is different, I think we'll start grabbing some of that capital and getting folks to come back.
No, I agree with you 100%. So I want to thank you again for taking the time to do this. It's very enlightening. And we'll see you again next time on Multifamily MarketWatch.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information. HFO is a member of Global Real Estate Advisors. Learn more at GREA.com.